Welcome to Print 40k, and sooner or later it will come up. The question if I hate Games Workshop and if I think that 3D printing will kill Games Workshop. And the opposite is true. I think that 3D printing will save Games Workshop. And I want to give you some reasons around that. You see, I'm a fan of Games Workshop and I gave them a lot of money in all the times I'm into the hobby. But you see, from time to time, especially when you sit on tons of bits, you think about what you can do with the bits, so you improvise and you start to model some parts that you're missing and so on. And 3D printing was of course a possibility to go around that, to use my bits and find out that I can work without the complete bits. But before we go into that, 3D printing is a wonderful opportunity, but you do not get to the quality of an injected molded part. You just do not. But the thing is, and this is one of the questions that comes up a lot, and this is that people say that when you use 3D printed part, you pretty much steal from Games Workshop. That's not true. You can use whatever you want as proxies. A lot of people just buy the book and play then by the book, but with proxies. They use Lego parts, they use cartoon boxes. I have seen people use paper flyers for tanks. People do that. And if you go back in the very old rule books, you see a lot of suggestions for proxies, because Games Workshop back then did not have a model for each and everything that they had rules for. So from my point of view, it is not a problem if you say, I play Tau today, but I play them with my Space Marines. You just prox them, or you play with Lego parts. You can do that. And Games Workshop has no reason to point out that this is thievery or something like this. You see, I see that Games Workshop will have a lot of problems with the youth, pretty much because they are way too expensive if you want to start the whole hobby. And I think, again, that 3D printing might give you a solution to that. But if you go right now, again, to the model that is printed out and the model that you just buy, and you compare them in simulate rates, you see that the 3D printed parts are not as wonderful, smooth and cool and so on than the injected molded machined part. Absolutely clear. But I think that you reach around 80% of the quality that is from an injected molded part. And I think for most people this 80% is enough. So if you now decide to print your army in 40k, you have to think of the costs. What does this normal model cost? What does this model cost when it's 3D printed? Because you need your plastic, you need the machine, you need the energy, you need the working time, and you need time and space for the whole machine and stuff. So in regards of this figure, in plastics, I would say you are at around 20 euros for 1 kilo or 2 kilo, depends on what quality of the plastic you use. And in this case, this model weighs around 10 grams. It's pretty lightweight. So plastic, in plastic it is 10 cents costs just for the plastic. For the machine, let's say we go in the middle class with a 500 bucks machine, and let's say this 500 bucks machine works 10,000 hours. After this 10,000 hours, you will have to reinvest 500 euros to get a machine that is equally good. So you reinvest it into the machine, or you scrap it and get another machine. I calculate with 10,000 hours. Some people say this is too low, some say it is too high. I think it is a good value. So this thing needs 10 hours of machining time, so this is around 11 cents that this thing wears out your machine. On energy side, the machine in this range takes on around 100 watts, and energy right now is around 70 cents per kilowatt hour. It depends on where you are, of course, but again, if you work it 10 hours, it's around 70 cents of energy. And then there's the working time. You see, you have to invest some working time, you have to slice it, you have to download it, you have to do things around that. And if you say, okay, I would earn 50 bucks per hour if I do some overtime and do not work around on these things, and I have to invest around 30 minutes into that to get to the whole thing. This would translate to 25 bucks. If you calculate removing all the things that shouldn't be there, it goes beyond that. The next thing is time and space. This depends if you have to rent space for your machine or if you have it. This is a big question mark and this can vary highly, so I ignore it for this very moment. So we added up to $25.50 for this whole thing. But if you take a closer look, you see that everything is your own working cost, and if you say no, I ignore that, it is a hobby, I like to do that, and you calculate this away and you just take a look to material, the machine and energy, you see this pretty equally. You need the same amount of money for the machine, for the material and for the energy. And if you sum up that, then you are down at $50 for this whole model. And if you buy it in the store, you are at around $50. So this makes a difference, which comes to the thing that you get for 1% of the costs, 80% of the quality. And again, this is a good deal. 80% of the quality for 1% of the costs. So if you want to go into the hobby right now, you can decide even to go into the shop and invest about $1,000, $2,000 or something like that to get an army that you can really use for playing, not just for I have 5 figurettes and 1 rhino and now I can play with my friends. Ha 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 ha, starter kit, stupid thingy, this doesn't work. You need $1,000. Or, on the other hand, you can say, okay, we are 3 guys and we want all armies and we get together and we buy one of these cheaper 3D printers for $200 and some material, and then we print for 2 weeks, 2 months or something like that, and we have an investment of $10 to $50. And there is a difference. And if you do that, you have then of course a completely printed army. This will not look as cool as a completely bought army, no question about that, but you have the chance to play and to fall in love with the hobby and say, okay, I have these 3D printed thingies, but they do not look so good, so I want my headquarter to be a real Games Workshop thingy. And you go to the shop and buy one of these overpriced, a little bit expensive Games Work figurettes, and then you say, oh, for my birthday I want these in this tank, and then you slowly but surely replace the printed parts with Games Workshop parts, especially there where you want to highlight some things in your army, which is pretty much your headquarter units and so on. This means that Games Workshop here acquired a customer that it would not have in the first place. And this is interesting because they have a problem with getting the younger players into the game. Over this other thing, you can get new players that will buy stuff from you. So I think in the end 3D printing will bring some customers to Games Workshop. Right now, of course, Games Workshop provides standard miniatures and other players provide the 3D models that can then be printed out with mixed quality. There are some units around with very high quality who look great, and then there is a lot of scrap running around. This is pretty much what this channel is for. I want to point out the really good stuff. If Games Workshop would, what they would never do, provide the 3D models for 3D printer in a middle quality, where you can see that this is 3D printed, but it is the Games Workshop stuff 3D printed, where they can point out, okay, this is lower quality, if you want a higher quality, buy one of these thingies. If they would provide that, the players would stop making models, I guess. Not completely, but to a large degree. From my position, I produce models if I do not have, if I can't find them on Thingiverse. If Games Workshop would provide it, even though on a weaker quality, I would not do this work in the end. So in this case, Games Workshop could control the market also on the part where it is more or less free. I do not think that they will do it. So what we have right now is, as we said before, you get for 1% of the costs, 80% of the quality. Costs will fall and quality will rise, which means that over time you will get for 1% of the costs 95% of the quality. And at this point Games Workshop might have a problem, because there is the motivation to go into that not so high anymore. And at a certain point you will get better quality for very low costs. A lot of models that are out there are already, from the 3D model, better than what you can get from Games Workshop. And when the 3D printing technology improves even further, you have way cooler stuff that you can 3D print than what you can buy. Because like the orc with flamethrower, it is so wonderfully not politically correct, and Games Workshop can't put this thing out in the market so easily. An orc that shows you the finger. Oh, how evil, evil, evil this would be. So the thing is to keep this down at 1%, at 80% of the quality. Games Workshop would have to try to control this part of the market. For that, they would have to give out models. And I guess they will never do that. But they could do that, in theory. So they could hold down the quality to this very point. As I said before, I do not think that this would ever happen, but it might happen, it could happen, it would be an idea. But this is my reasoning behind the whole thing. I do not think that what I'm doing here is hurting Games Workshop. I think I help Games Workshop out. The question is, of course, how Games Workshop sees that, but we will see that in the future. So, thanks for listening, like, share and subscribe, and print your future.